In 1979, in Mexico City, a young woman named Rebecca Luna Garcia arrives at Juarez Hospital for a nursing interview. The position is for a 12-hour night shift. As head nurse Hortensia reviews Rebecca's resume, she notices a 4-year gap with no employment. When asked, Rebecca explains that she was unable to work because she was caring for her father, who has now passed away. Rebecca is deeply religious and follows the principles of Saint Agatha. Most of her life has been spent caring for her father, leaving no room for romance or close friendships. Strict, disciplined, and devoted to rules, she appears to Hortensia as the perfect candidate. Consequently, Rebecca is hired that very night and placed in the critical unit under a probationary period. Hortensia introduces her to the staff. Finally, Dr. Dalton steps forward and shows Rebecca old photographs of the hospital in the gallery. He explains that this is one of the oldest hospitals in Mexico, rebuilt many times over the years. He also mentions that during the 1957 earthquake, many staff members, doctors, and patients lost their lives. Later, in the restroom, as Garcia organizes her locker, she notices old blade scars on her legs and drifts into painful memories. While ironing her uniform, she meets 2 colleagues, Luciana and Paulo. When they address her as Garcia, Rebecca grows uncomfortable, as she is used to being called by her first name. The 2 tease her lightly while explaining the strict rules of the night shift. Nothing can be forgotten, no distractions are allowed, no personal relationships with coworkers are permitted, and sleeping during duty is strictly forbidden. They warn her that breaking these rules could make her a victim of La Planchada. La Planchada is one of Mexico's most famous urban legends. Before starting her shift, Rebecca secretly steals all her documents from Mr. Arthur's drawer. The reason remains unclear. She then performs her duties meticulously, giving medication and changing dressings on time for every patient. As midnight passes, Rebecca suddenly hears soft singing in the corridor. Annoyed and curious, she goes to check but finds no one. Still, the sound feels disturbingly close. She chooses to ignore it and returns to work. While rushing through her tasks, medicine spills onto her uniform. She goes to the locker room to change and discovers that her locker has been opened. Nothing is missing, but suspicion grows. Suddenly, she senses someone standing outside. When she steps out cautiously, the corridor is completely empty. Feeling uneasy, she returns to change her clothes. At that moment, the clear sound of heels walking echoes from outside. Terrified, she peeks out and sees a shadowy figure slowly approaching the door. Then, it vanishes, and the sound stops on its own. Rebecca wastes no more time and begins her next round. When she checks on Mr. Seban, she is shocked. The man who was earlier unable to sleep due to pain now appears perfectly fine. He explains that a nurse dressed in black gave him an injection. Startled, Rebecca checks the register and finds an entry marked with "EE". Furious that someone treated her patient in her absence, she blames Luciana, only to learn that Luciana already has too many patients and no reason to come here. It could have been an off-duty doctor, or perhaps La Planchada. As Luciana leaves, the corridor lights begin to blink, and the faint singing returns. A shadowy figure slowly moves toward Rebecca. Suddenly, the emergency alarm rings. A patient experiences severe chest pain. With no doctor arriving in time, Rebecca administers basic treatment, easing the patient's pain. Moments later, Dr. Suarez arrives and humiliates her, implying that if nurses handled treatment, doctors would be unnecessary. When Rebecca shows him the register and the unfamiliar name, Suarez claims he knows no one by that name. Before leaving, he warns her that if problems continue, she will be transferred to reception or the cafeteria. Days pass in a cycle of work and humiliation. 2 weeks later, Rebecca unexpectedly encounters her childhood friend Ariana at the hospital. Rebecca is caught off guard, unaware that Ariana works the day shift there. When Ariana addresses her by another name, Rebecca firmly refuses, making it clear she does not want that name known at her workplace. Ariana happily invites her for coffee, but Rebecca leaves without responding. Later, during Rebecca's break, a new patient is admitted to the critical unit. Immediate surgery is required, a procedure performed only once before in Mexico. To protect the hospital's reputation, success is crucial. With staff already short, Rebecca is asked to assist in the operation. She agrees. On her way downstairs, she notices a receptionist dozing off and wakes her, reminding her of the rules. Around 8:30 in the evening, before the surgery begins, Dalton introduces Rebecca to all the instruments to avoid confusion during the procedure. The surgery proceeds smoothly at first. However, due to Dalton's carelessness, a blade slips inside the patient's body, causing severe internal bleeding. As Dalton asks Rebecca to administer medication, she again hears singing. When she looks toward the dark corner, fear grips her. A terrifying nurse dressed in black, wearing a mask, slowly approaches, gesturing as if trying to communicate something. Rebecca screams. The patient suddenly sits upright, and his internal organs begin to spill out. In panic, Rebecca manages to lay him back down. The doctors remove the blade, and the situation barely returns to normal. Although the surgery succeeds, all blame falls on Rebecca. After work, in the changing room, Rebecca prays to Mother Mary for justice. She has turned her locker into a makeshift place of worship. Suddenly, all the other lockers open on their own. Overcome with fear, Rebecca cuts her leg with a blade to calm herself. The locker doors then close again. It is 3 in the morning. The receptionist is fast asleep. Footsteps are heard in the corridor. At the far end stands the mysterious nurse. She whispers, urging the receptionist to wake up. The girl somehow steadies herself and looks into a mirror, discovering 5 clear finger marks on her cheek. No one else is nearby, so she assumes Rebecca is responsible. However, this belief is soon shattered. The next day, while Rebecca is talking with Ariana, manager Artura arrives and asks Rebecca to submit her documents, as the administration believes they have gone missing. Meanwhile, Dalton continues pursuing his own agenda. He flirts with Rebecca, indirectly suggesting that if she provides special favors, her workload will decrease and she will gain control over her shifts. As he speaks, Rebecca suddenly sees the mysterious nurse again. At that exact moment, a ceiling light crashes down. Both narrowly survive. Rebecca's attention then falls on a photograph of nurses from 1875. The uniform they are wearing is identical to the one worn by the mysterious nurse she has seen. Rebecca begins to suspect that the spirit of one of these nurses is haunting her. The next day, she sits praying in front of the photographs. She notices Dr. Dalton walking around with Luciana. It does not take long for her to understand their true nature. She restrains herself and focuses on her prayers, but Hortensia interrupts, explaining that such behavior is inappropriate in a hospital. She also warns that the more Rebecca dwells on La Planchada, the more she will sense its presence. Instead, this fear should help her follow the rules during her probation period. Amid all this, Rebecca runs into Ariana again. Seeing her every day, it feels as though Ariana is hiding something. Even today, she keeps it unspoken. In truth, she never imagined she would meet Rebecca here. After a moment of hesitation, Ariana reveals a secret. She explains that during childhood, Rebecca's father abused her. Not only that, he was also involved in a relationship with Ariana. Hearing this, Rebecca is deeply shaken and drifts into her own thoughts. One realization echoes in her mind: this may be the reason colleagues are forbidden from forming personal connections. Meanwhile, Dalton tries again to force a favor from Rebecca and humiliates her by bringing up Luciana. Enraged, Rebecca enters the changing room to confront him. When Dalton behaves indecently, Rebecca slaps him. In response, Dalton punches her and leaves. The blow leaves Rebecca devastated. In anger, she throws the statue of Mother Mary. At that moment, supernatural activity begins. One by one, all the locker doors open. After a while, Rebecca calms herself by pressing her ID card against the wound on her leg, regaining control. Everything returns to normal, though her behavior now appears increasingly unstable. That night, a 16-year-old girl named Vanessa is brought into the emergency unit after a car accident. After medication is administered, Vanessa, still dazed, flirts with Dalton. Rebecca notices this. She says nothing, but the thought troubles her throughout the night. Later, when Dalton goes to check emergency patients, he mistreats Rebecca. When she asks why she is treated this way despite being on probation, Dalton reminds her of the slap. Soon, Rebecca's suspicion proves true. Dalton injects Vanessa with medication and becomes physically involved with her. Rebecca secretly witnesses everything. At that moment, in the empty corridor, she senses the presence of the mysterious nurse. At her locker, behind the photo of Mother Mary, Rebecca sees the back of a human figure covered entirely in stitched wounds, as if something is trying to emerge from within. The atmosphere grows heavier as the sound of the nurse's footsteps echoes. Rebecca feels cold, and then a horrifying incident occurs. After this event, a drastic change overtakes Rebecca. Her past trauma, the injustice she faces, and the unethical acts inside the hospital relentlessly haunt her. Still, as she forces herself toward the critical unit in a disturbed state, an unseen force suddenly pushes her toward the stairs. Terrified, she tells Dalton, but he refuses to believe her. Inside the unit, she sees Seven gesturing desperately. Then an appalling sight is revealed. Vanessa has mutilated her own face with a surgical knife. Dalton manages to control the situation. When police officers arrive, suspicion points in two directions: either Vanessa was given a drug overdose, or she attempted to end her own life. A guard is assigned to watch her until the investigation proceeds. Although Rebecca's probation period ends, the previous night's incident becomes public. Vanice's family is interviewed, and competing hospitals seize the opportunity to accuse Juarez Hospital of unethical practices. As a result, several patients are transferred elsewhere, and most staff take leave. During duty, Dr. Suarez repeatedly taunts Rebecca, blaming her because Vanessa was her unit's patient and chaos followed her arrival. These events, along with insults from doctors and guards, begin to affect her deeply. Rebecca understands that what happened to Vanessa is due to Dalton's overdose, a truth that may never come out. When an investigating officer arrives, Dalton manipulates the situation to direct all suspicion toward Rebecca. When officers come to question her, Rebecca avoids them under the pretext of work. After the officers leave, Rebecca sees Dalton and Luciana being intimate. Once again, the mysterious singing returns. That evening, police send a technician to install CCTV cameras in the critical unit. Even then, Dalton does not stop. To punish Rebecca, he assaults her in the restroom. During this, Dalton notices someone standing outside the door. Rebecca stares in that direction, hoping the nurse's spirit will save her. No help comes. When there is a knock, Dalton's fear fades, and Rebecca realizes it is not the nurse but hospital staff. Consumed by hatred, rage, and humiliation, Rebecca begins questioning Mother Mary, wondering why this keeps happening to her. Immediately, supernatural activity resumes. A strange darkness slowly engulfs her. The presence of the ghostly nurse continues to torment her mentally and physically. Suddenly, Rebecca sees a hand beckoning from within the stitched wound inside the locker. She opens the stitches, passes through flesh and blood, and enters a supernatural realm. There, she finds an old newspaper reporting the death of a nurse named Eulalia Estrada at Juarez Hospital. The article states that Eulalia killed several patients and a doctor before ending her own life. Rebecca finally understands that the double E signature in the register referred to Eulalia. Moments later, the singing returns. Eulalia is seen ironing her nursing uniform, just as Rebecca does daily. Eulalia explains that over time, crimes and hypocrisy have increased in the hospital. After her death, no one remained to punish the guilty. Now, it is time to uphold the rules, and only Rebecca can do it. With each word, Eulalia's face becomes increasingly monstrous, reflecting a demonic presence. Hours pass. The guard wakes to the sound of singing. The echo of heels approaches from the corridor, closer and closer. Suddenly, a surgical tray moves on its own near the critical unit. Terrified, the guard unlocks the door and enters, finding blood-soaked flesh on a table. Checking the next cabin, he recoils in horror. Eulalia is cutting flesh from Luciana's chest while Luciana screams in unbearable pain. As the guard tries to flee and falls, he watches patients in nearby cabins die one by one under inexplicable circumstances. The guard becomes Eulalia's first victim. Rebecca manages to free Luciana and tries to escape, but Suarez arrives. Eulalia brutally kills him. The violence does not stop. Rebecca desperately tries to save the others but fails. Hearing screams, she rushes to warn Arturo, approaching from the corridor. Arturo becomes another victim. In an attempt to save him, Rebecca accidentally drives a surgical knife into Arturo's head, killing him. Dalton then arrives, trying to understand the chaos. Eulalia brutally kills him as well. Strangely, before dying, Dalton repeatedly seeks forgiveness from Rebecca. After the massacre, police arrive. Rebecca insists that Eulalia killed everyone and that Eulalia is La Planchada. However, when police review the CCTV footage, they are stunned. A shocking truth is revealed. The footage shows that no supernatural force is responsible. Rebecca herself committed the acts. The investigation reveals that Rebecca was physically abused by her father since childhood. Over time, this trauma created a distorted psychological identity within her. Eventually, she tortured and killed her father. After her arrest, she was kept at Juarez Hospital for mental treatment. Later, she escaped, changed her name, and rejoined the same hospital years later as a nurse. This is why Hortensia had asked during their first meeting if they had met before. It is also revealed that on her first day, after submitting documents, Rebecca deliberately stole both her past and present records to hide her identity. Rebecca believed that serving as a nurse would erase her sins and trauma. Instead, the injustice she faces at the hospital reawakens her fractured psyche. Dalton's actions revive her childhood trauma, and discovering Eulalia's story leads her to imagine Eulalia as La Planchada. From that moment, a new identity forms within Rebecca. In reality, there was never any supernatural presence in the hospital. Everything stems from Rebecca's own psychological breakdown. As the truth becomes clear, Rebecca refuses to accept it. To her, everything feels like a dream. Overcome by guilt and self-loathing, she suddenly sees Eulalia again within an officer. She attacks and kills him. In the end, Rebecca leaves behind unsettling questions. Is all the blame truly hers, or does it belong to the father who shattered her body and mind, or to a society that never acknowledged her wounds?